Al Gore can challenge the elections and seek redress in the courts. Donald Trump can't. Rules for thee and not for me. That's the left's approach to the rule of law, and Judicial Watch is going to stand against it. What I love about Judicial Watch is that we're into so much. And, if you're concerned about an issue, we're likely concerned about an issue. And I know many of you are concerned about what happened in the 2020 election. And what the left is trying to do now is they're trying to suggest that anyone who had concerns about the way the 2020 election was handled, whether the outcome was accurate or not, it's not even a question about debating you. They want to make it seem like you're a terrorist. I mean, that's the position of the Biden administration. Their national security divisions. I've highlighted that previously on this program. You have the January 6th Rump Committee harassing American citizens based on their First Amendment freedoms in retaliation for them objecting to the way the elections were conducted and challenging and disputing the election, which is their right under the federal law and our Constitution. And now you had all sorts of litigation, you may recall, that the left celebrates as all being dismissed. And of course, it's much more complicated than that. But now they're trying to punish the lawyers who asked questions and litigated some of the concerns that people had about the elections. And the most famous lawyer in that regard, perhaps, is Sidney Powell. And there were some other litigants, lawyers, who were pursuing some of these cases in the various states. Now, the problem when you are challenging election results or the way elections are run, after election, you've got really a small window of time. So it's really quick and dirty. You got to run to court and make your challenge, because certainly in a presidential election, you've got this compressed time frame because the decision making is done within, let's say, November, December, 2 months. So you don't have a lot of time. So you run to court, you try to make your case, and you have obligations as a lawyer to make your case in good faith and not bring things to be false to the court or arguments or legal positions that to be false and frivolous to the court. That's obviously basic legal ethics 101. Now, what's happened is that the left has decided that any lawyers who did that need to be disbarred, jailed, prosecuted, investigated, have their emails taken, all sorts of things, including some courts who are frankly more about making Trump look bad than enforcing the rule of law here. And Judicial Watch really is troubled by this because, we do election litigation. We're involved in these sensitive areas of law. Are they going to come and try to shut us down, chill our speech? And what happened to Sidney Powell is that a U.S. District Court in Michigan sanctioned her and other attorneys who had brought some cases related to the Michigan election, the presidential election at least, in Michigan. As we say, and we filed an amicus brief because Sidney Powell has appealed this, we filed an amicus brief. So we're not afraid. Everyone's supposed to denounce Sidney Powell. We're not afraid to say Sidney Powell had a right to bring these cases, and she shouldn't be held to a standard no other lawyer would be held to punish her in retaliation for asking questions the establishment didn't want asked. Judicial Watch argues that improperly sanctioning lawyers for bringing civil rights litigation on elections will have a chilling effect. Voting and election litigation constitute some of the most contentious political forms of civil rights litigation. These qualities are even more acute in post-election disputes where litigation schedules are compressed and available information is limited and often dynamic. Nevertheless, the prosecution and defense of election disputes play an important role in our electoral and political process. As a conservative advocacy group that often brings election and voting lawsuits, including those to enforce federal and state election integrity laws, Judicial Watch has a particular interest in the issues at stake here. If the decision of the district court is affirmed and the appellants are sanctioned, the precedent will be weaponized to threaten legitimate parties prosecuting election integrity claims. And what the court did here, in my view, was particularly outrageous, and I encourage you to read the full amicus brief, which is available online at judicialwatch.org, is that, for instance, this is, and there are some complicated legal issues that I'm not capable of getting into here. But for instance, the court yelled at Sidney Powell for bringing claims that were thrown out by other courts. But what the court didn't acknowledge is the claims were subsequently thrown out by other courts. So she's being punished for what courts subsequently did. And that's just one example of the abuse of discretion as we highlight here. Court sanctioning lawyers pursuing election law claims in the heat of an election is a dangerous game. Don't you agree? And it could allow election corruption to go unchecked. That's the goal of the left here. One of these left-wing groups, they're now in the process of raising millions of dollars to target every lawyer who disputed elections, every citizen who potentially wanted to participate as alternative electors in these election disputes. I've never seen anything like it before in American history. This partisan retaliation and harassment of lawyers involved in litigating a 2020 election dispute is unprecedented and undermines the rule of law. And the court should have no part of it. And it's a shame this district court judge did what she did. And I'm hoping the appeals court pays attention to what we filed and protects you by protecting Sidney Powell and protects you by telling this lower court you can't be punishing lawyers for trying as they see fit to use the law to preserve their rights and the rights of the candidates they represent in election disputes. That's what they want to do. They want to outlaw election disputes from the wrong people. And that's what's interesting about Judicial Watch's case that's going on right now in Maryland. You've had all these leftists challenging gerrymandering by Republicans allegedly all throughout the United States. And one of the worst gerrymanders is by the Democrat legislature of Maryland. And so it's up to Judicial Watch to come in and represent voters, at least under Maryland state law and constitution, who objected to this gerrymander. So just to let you know, we've had this trial going on, as I talked about a little bit last week, this week. So I'm not sure how the court's going to rule. It probably will be appealed one way or another, no matter how the court rules. But we're literally in court trying to vindicate the rule of law and protect the rights of voters. And I tell you, there's so few of us on our side of the philosophical divide on election integrity that do this type of work. This is why these threats to target the lawyers is a dire threat to election integrity generally. Because how do you enforce the rules of law on election integrity if you don't have people willing to do it? You just can't say only one side can do it. Those who want to undermine election integrity are the only ones allowed to go to court. You can only go to court if you challenge voter ID. I mean, that's the left's point of view here. Or you can only challenge elections if you're a leftist. Al Gore can challenge the elections and seek redress in the courts. Donald Trump can't. Rules for thee and not for me. That's the left's approach to the rule of law, and Judicial Watch is going to stand against it.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.